This is the morning sports desk for Friday, the 3rd or the 8th of the 3rd month of the year. How about
There
that,
it is.
Corey? There
Very
we
good.
go.
Well, if you take a 3 and you reverse it and smash it together, it becomes an 8.
Yes.
So
Yes.
technically you were almost exactly right.
There we go. You see, one time last fall, I was doing doing a football game, and Wadena Deer Creek was playing. I can't remember who it was. If it was Breckenridge or something like that. All I remember is that at the end of the game, post game show ended up going a little bit longer than I wanted to. It's a Friday night. Your brain's a little fried from the week, and I was about to sign off, and I said. And then I said our names wrong because Dirk Schultz joins us on the broadcast. I said I was Dirk and he was me, and I got a good laugh out of him on that one. It's just one of those like, oh man, it's the end of the week, huh? It's definitely a Friday.
Sometimes it runs together. You know what? Those speaking of like weird numbers, right? Like you take a 3, you copy it, you flip it around, you smash it together, you get an 8. Did you ever notice that the letter B is just a 1 and a 3 smashed together? Like I write the letter B and the number 13 exactly the same. It's just the amount of space that's in between those two lines.
Well, when you put it like that, I mean,
don't you think? Is that true for you? Do you think? No, I have to test it.
I mean, like, I feel like I would notice it. I just, I wouldn't say that it's exactly what it is, mainly because I feel like you have better handwriting than I do.
No, I don't. Here, look at this. Let me see. How do I?
Gotta wait for the bright. There you go. There you.
Look at it's just a 1 and a 3.
Pretty much.
That's all it is.
That's all it is.
You ever notice that? You never noticed that before? Or your handwriting? Or does your handwriting really suck that it's just literally?
It's not that bad, but it's definitely like I feel like my 3s are pretty sloppy. If that's what they're not as good as a B is. They don't have the rounded edges. My calligraphy is not up to snuff.
You're right. There's some other letters I think that are like a I'm trying to an R.
Mm-hmm.
An R is basically just a 12.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, that's a really bad. Here, look at. Where are we at? An R and a 12. It's the same.
Pretty much.
An R and a 12 are the same. Z. I mean, obviously, like Z's and 2s.
I mean, you need to write an S for when you write an 8. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you're right.
You gotta do the little.
It's just a long. An 8 is really just a long S.
It's an S that really kind of slithers on. You know. Have we done enough? Have we done enough beating around the bush on this one?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. So yesterday there was some boys playoff basketball action. Corey, you were in Henning last night for Section 6A. How was that?
Henning kind of took it to Frazee in that one. I don't remember the final score. It was Henning just kind of dominated. Not from the tip. This is how the game started, okay? Frazee hit a 3 in the first 15, 20 seconds. Henning got a layup in the first 40 seconds. It's 3-2. Frazee hit a 3 to make it 6-2. Henning got a 3 to make it 6-5. Then Henning got a 3 to make it 8-6. That was 3 minutes in. Mm-hmm. By the way, when it was 6-5 for teams, it was also 6-5. The two players had done all of the scoring. And then it was 8-6. And from that point forward, Henning didn't trail ever again. So the first 3 minutes were back and forth and kind of bang, bang, bang. And then Henning went crazy from that point forward. Caleb Musigatis finished with 40, which is pretty good. And the only other player in double figures was Tegan Bierke. He had 11. And which seems weird, but when one of the people scores 40, that is effectively like two people scoring a double. It's just an insane. 40 is an insane number. There was a moment where my scorecard only goes to 49, I circled the little numbers, and I was like, this is in play. I cannot believe it. I've never had to go beyond. I've never had to go beyond a 49. I've never seen a 50-point performance. I've had 2 opportunities this year where I thought there was a chance. Torrey Orline scored 42, and Caleb Musigatis dropped a 40 burger last night. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, in football, one time, I think it was during OTC's state first, the quarterfinal game in the state tournament for football. I think they handed the ball off to Dilly so many times that I had to go into you go through the first one, there's kind of like a second line. I had to open up a whole new layer on my stat sheet, and I filled that one up pretty good. It's fun when you get to go to those games because you feel compelled to say it on the broadcast. Like, I have filled out my stat sheet, just so you all know.
Right.
This does not happen very often.
Right. Yeah, and it wasn't like they handed it off to him, 36 times and he had 42 rushing yards either.
Right.
Like, he has run the ball 36 times and he's got 279 yards rushing or whatever. I remember that. He had an unbelievable game.
Right.
Like, the numbers on the ground. I remember that.
And that postseason success obviously traveled forward a little bit to basketball. So Henning came away with the win. Corey, what's next for them?
We'll cover that in the broadcast schedule. So why don't you recap your game, because then we've got a game tonight that we want to talk about, and then we've got games on Saturday tomorrow that we want to talk about. So I will get to that Henning game in a second.
Okay, so let me talk about my game. So yesterday I had Verndale at Bertha Hewitt, and we talked about it yesterday, Corey. There is a chance that even though it's a 6-3, Bertha beat them twice in the regular season. There was an opportunity, Verndale, if they could do X, Y, and Z right, they would win the game, and Verndale did X, Y, and Z right. I believe the final score ended up 71-64, 72-64, somewhere in there as a final score. Verndale comes away with the win. And, obviously they did what they do on defense. They can get after it. They have a zone that gave Bertha Hewitt a little bit of fits. Bertha Hewitt missed 13 shots from the free throw line, which any coach will tell you that's not a night you want to have. Their outside shooting didn't quite line up where they wanted to be, but the things that went right for Verndale is they played good defense. And also, I was talking with Greg Johnson, the head coach, before the game, and I asked him, because I saw him earlier in the season, I said, what's the difference between that point and now? Because they won 4 in a row and 5 out of their last 6 heading into the playoffs. And he said one of the biggest reasons is Carter White and Jaden Schulke both are the top scorers on the team, but they needed that secondary level of scoring. And he said it hadn't quite gotten there yet. And he said that they've started to get that more as the season got towards the end. And you saw that Zane Waldall, who came off the bench, had 17 points.
Yeah, he can really shoot, can he?
He had a good game. I believe Schulke led Verndale in all scores with over 20 points. But yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Carter White had a nice game. He had 8 points. He had a good effort. But that's the thing, is in times earlier in the season for Verndale, that doesn't show up and they have a tough time winning those games. You get Waldall to coming off the bench and give you 17. Well, you're in a pretty good position. So I thought overall, Verndale just did we talked about yesterday. There were certain things Verndale needed to win, and they got those things to go right, and they pull off the upset and they advance.
Yeah, it's it sounds like we're oversimplifying things when we talk about this kind of stuff, but there is a level of execution that just matters, and the team that
in a single game elimination.
Yeah, the team that executes their stuff, just the team that out executes is gonna win. And I know it's a 3-6 matchup, but those two are longtime rivals. Those teams are closer than just records and seedings probably indicate.
Right.
So, if it would have been a 4-5 matchup, it wouldn't have, are you talking about it really being an upset? No, not really. That's just that's unfortunately for Bertha Hewitt, that's how it works itself out, is they probably just got out executed a little bit.
Well, and we mentioned the rivalry, these two schools, and I asked Coach Johnson about it in the pregame, and he said, honestly, the more kids, the more you want to compete against them. And those guys all want to compete against each other, and you saw it. And that's the thing. I was saying it on air. I've said it off air. These two schools will get up to play each other, and Verndale will always get up to try and beat one of their rivals. And they had an opportunity to do it last night, and they did. And Bertha Hewitt, their offense just didn't quite get going in time. There was a spot in the game where they took the lead about midway through the second half. It looked like, okay, Bertha Hewitt was going to get this thing back on track, and the Verndale defense just prevented them from scoring. They had like a 5-minute game clock scoring drought, and Verndale didn't shoot the lights out in that stretch, but they just had enough of a consistent offensive effort to where by the time Bertha Hewitt finally kind of got things rolling again, it was all, in hindsight, it was already too late. And talking with Coach Selvey of Bertha Hewitt pregame, it's his first year coaching. He's, got the program in the, trying to get that thing going in the right direction. And, he said our offense can be really good. It can also kind of dry up a little bit. He said it's been a lot of peaks and valleys in terms of that offensive production. And that's just, we talk about, with the Vikings, they just missed a field goal at the wrong time. And if you talk about Bertha Hewitt, if you go, we just had a 5-minute scoring drought at the exact wrong time in the exact wrong game. And that's ultimately, there's a lot of different things in this ball game. Like you said, we're oversimplifying it a little bit, but sometimes that's just how it goes.
Sometimes it's just how it goes. There are a couple of teams, though, whose seasons remain alive. Section 8 AA Girls Basketball Championship tonight. You're going to go see that campus at Concordia one more time.
Going back, by the way, I mentioned it a little bit yesterday. Very fun place to call a basketball game. I know you think that, and they do a great job. Talked about the building yesterday. Go back and listen to that episode we did with Zeke on the morning sports desk, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, WadenaRadio.com, Superstation K106 app, or the Hubbard Radio-Wadena YouTube page. That's where you can check out the morning sports desk. But for Perham, they're 25-3 overall, 15-2 in Section 8 AA, 10-2 in the Heart of Lakes Conference, and the only team that they lost to in the Heart of Lakes, they just beat in Barnesville on Wednesday night. These two teams played in the regular season, and not too long ago, there was a game in Pelican Rapids on the 15th of February. It was a 5-point win for Perham. And then in the other game, it was also a 5-point win for Perham on January 12th at the Hive. So these two teams play each other close. Both these teams could make a case to be number one. Pelican Rapids 25-3 with their record, 15-3 in the section. Obviously, Perham getting a couple top 10 wins throughout the season helps their QRF a lot. But these are two teams that are very comparable, and I think both head coaches, sometimes when you talk to coaches and they go, hey, if we don't do this right, we could lose. And you go, you're right, but you just might be the more talented team. You might still be able to get by them. In this game, I think both of these teams feel like that other team is capable of beating them. So they need to rise up and try and do what they need to do to win.
A couple of additional points. I believe these two teams were co-conference champs.
Yes, co-conference champs.
In the HOL. One of the interesting things, at one point in the season, Pelican Rapids only had one conference loss, and Perham had two. And it was looking very much like there was a chance that Pelican Rapids could have been conference champs, and Perham would have been the number one seed in the section, which seems entirely opposite and backwards. But to your point, some of the QRF and some of the victories and opponents that the Yellow Jackets have played, I just thought that'd be fascinating to see a team win the conference but not have the resume to be win a conference in a team in a section that has to not have the resume to it was just wild. That seems like so confusing, kind of silly to me. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and exactly.
Then, to your point about Concordia, as just a point I saw this on Twitter the other day, and I thought it was a really kind of astute point about Concordia and hosting these section tournaments. Imagine how wild it would be for the area schools around here to not play their section championship games at the Fargo Dome. Right? Like the idea of not right. The Fargo Dome is where section championship football around here is played. That's
right. To a lot of teams, that's like making the state tournament. Like that's a successful season. It's just getting to the Fargo Dome.
And it's right. And it's such this it's been like a stalwart of this is where we do these things. Concordia is that way also. So it's really nice to be back at Concordia where it is that's the home for section basketball in the area, and it's a really cool arena and it's really loud. So I am glad that they are back. The 6A for a long time went one half at Concordia and the other half at Morris. And both of those gyms, while different, are such unbelievable atmospheres once people get going. They're loud, old school gyms. I love them.
Exactly. And that's the thing is like, obviously Detroit Lakes hosting like that facility is great. That's a fun place to call a
Gorgeous.
game as well.
Yes.
But there, like you said, there's just something different about, for some of these teams, going to Concordia, like we're going to Fargo Moorhead for this game. Like it's a big deal. And it kind of plays up. That's the fun of neutral site games. And there's obviously a point of like for 5A, the games are in Wadena Deer Creek. It's awesome. They're a great host. They're a great site, and it's local. Like it's a quick drive for everybody.
Yep.
There is no other venue, but also like to take it to, if you're somebody like Verndale, you've played on that court already, you play on it every year. There's a little bit of like, and obviously once you get to a section championship game, the venue changes depending on where you're at. But like some sections are going to play their title games at St. Cloud State in their basketball court. Like there's just a bit of like like this is a big time thing. Like Section 6A used to also do their games at MSUM. That's also like a whoa, like we're getting to play in this. Like this is special. And it's the same thing for everybody. Everybody can have their different tastes. But like you said, going to Concordia and getting to do some of that stuff is really, really fun. And also it's a different venue for me. So I get to kind of check it off my list of places I've been to. So selfishly, that's where I'm at with that. But the game tonight is on the Superstation K106 105.9 FM, streaming online at WadenaRadio.com or the Superstation K106 mobile app. 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock tip-off, as they say in Section 8 AA girls basketball. Let's do that Section 8 AA girls basketball.
We've got a triple header of basketball on the air tomorrow. We don't need to dive into all of the details. Just know Superstation K106 tomorrow, 6A boys basketball, Perham in Perham will be Henning versus Park Christian, 1 o'clock tip. On KWAD tomorrow, we'll have Section 5A basketball at Wadena Deer Creek, Browerville Eagle Valley versus Verndale. And then later that evening, 8 AA boys basketball will be Wadena Deer Creek hosting Dilworth Glendon Felton. All of those, that's a 7 o'clock tip if I didn't say that. All of those details at WadenaRadio.com.
Yeah, there's a lot. And I know we've talked a lot over the last 24 hours about potential Saturday matchups and scheduling and whatever. It's a long day for us, but man, is it fun.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. It's awesome. So we'll get ready for that. We'll have all those games. And again, we'll break it all down on Monday's episode of the Morning Sports Desk. Corey, we got a little bit of state sports to get to here in this one. We are very down in the dumps about the Carl Anthony Towns news. And there is an update. He's getting a minor surgery. He's believed to be out for a month. So theoretically, maybe he's not ready for that first round playoff series. But if you're an 8, if you're a 1, you're going to play the 8. Even if you're a 2, you're going to play the 7. There's a thought of like, you can still get by in that first round. And then can you get Carl Anthony Towns back for the second round? That'll be the big thing. But even still, it's just very like there was uncertainty down in the dumps, whatever. And Anthony Edwards decided to just have potentially the best game of his career, maybe the best game of his career. What do you think, Corey?
That was not potentially. That was 100% the best game he has ever played. He had 44 points. I think he had a half dozen rebounds. He had a couple of steals. He, by the way, had a goose egg for turnovers. Did you send me that information about?
Yes.
He tied Kevin Garnett for the most points with the fewest number without turning the ball over.
Yeah, first time he'd done that. That happened in 2007. So we've gone 17 years without having a performance like that.
44 points, no turnovers. And then to top it all off, he had the chase down game clinching block where he nearly took his own head off because he crashed into the backboard and rim on his way to the block. Unbelievable effort from him.
Unbelievable. I didn't see the game because we didn't watch it live. We both had games we broadcasted, but getting to look back on some of those highlights, just energy that Anthony Edwards brings. Like you see him running down the floor. He's timing it up. The officials don't call a foul. Like you could easily just blow a whistle because you feel like something's got to be there. It's all ball. He leaps. Anthony Edwards said in the postgame interview he had no idea that he hit his head. Like he just is, I don't know if he's just saying that because Anthony Edwards says a lot of words. They do their show, and Kevin Garnett said Anthony Edwards is 88 Michael Jordan. He's not Michael Jordan, but he's Michael Jordan before he became Michael Jordan. Like the things that he's seeing out of Anthony Edwards remind everybody of what Michael Jordan looked like in 1988. Corey, obviously that's a big comparison, but when you have a performance like you did last night, it's tough not to do what Kevin Garnett did and tweet it out again last night.
So there's a podcast I listen to fairly regularly, Bill Simmons. If you're into sports, you know who Bill Simmons is. He does a Sunday pod every week with Ryan Russillo, both obviously big NBA dorks. They just love it and they know everything about it. And the MJ comparison for Anthony Edwards is a thing that has been thrown out there. Like, not that he's going to be the greatest of all time, but that they look very, there's a vibe, there's an energy. They kind of play the same way. There's a Sam Cassell big balls kind of thing that Anthony Edwards brings to the table. And that's a thing that's out there that people talk about when it comes to Anthony Edwards, and nobody's willing to say he's the next Michael Jordan, but they all say there's some like things that are eerily similar to the way this guy used to do things. In last Sunday's podcast, they both, like Ryan Russillo and Bill Simmons, they like, there's these MJ thing. I don't even want to bring it up, but there are these things that exist that look very similar. Bill Simmons tweeted during the game and after the game where he said Anthony Edwards is doing that thing where he looks like a young MJ Dwayne Wade hybrid, which are the comparisons that he's getting. And there was sadness yesterday with the Timberwolves, but all of us talked about how if Anthony Edwards can become his thing, he's gifted enough to take the team to the next level without Karl Anthony Towns. And I saw highlights. I'm like you, I didn't see the game. I saw highlights. There's a lot of flexing that happens in NBA and in college and even in high school games that is showmanship. And that was the first time I saw Anthony Edwards like flex on people, and it looked like he was staring daggers through their heart and soul. It was not showmanship. Right. That was like a get off the tracks when the train is coming through sort of flexing. It was really impressive. Really impressive.
Right. And we talked about it yesterday with Anthony Edwards. The thing was, we always know these performances he's capable of. He's capable of doing that on any night. The thing has been the consistency. And I mean, he's a guy whose bones are made of rubber. That guy had to like leave the court a couple different times because he fell awkwardly. And he's done that this season where he leaves the game and everybody's like, oh my gosh, is he hurt? Is he hurt? And then like 10 minutes later, he's just out of the tunnel and he's fine and he's doing whatever. And Anthony Edwards said he's playing tonight. So like, he's going to be okay. They're on a back-to-back. Now, obviously we're not expecting him to score.
He took his head off on the backboard and then went kersplat like a pancake on the floor. Nothing broke his fall except his
himself.
Body. The floor broke his fall. And he just like got up and was like, let's go.
Right. And there's probably some adrenaline flowing in that one that certainly helps out. But
right.
The thing is, when nobody's expecting Anthony Edwards to drop 44 and a game-sealing block again, and I don't have on top of mind who the Timberwolves are playing tonight. I think it's
Cleveland.
The Cavaliers. Yep. And that's a very good team on the road. The Wolves winning, and the Pacers aren't bad either. So the Wolves to get one of these wins on a back-to-back East Coast trip to the top 5 teams in the Eastern Conference, to at least get one of them, you're already playing with house money. But can Anthony Edwards basically consistently take over games and not just have these pop-ups that like of true greatness once a month and then solid play after that? Like, how much of the greatness are we going to see out of Anthony Edwards consistently? That's the question.
Well, yeah. And that's a fair question. it's not going to be consistent yet. He's 22, 23 years old, something. However, I don't know how old he is. He cannot rent a car yet. That's how young he is. He's a long ways away still in his basketball career and athletic peak of the mountain sort of stuff.
He's being forced to grow up very early.
So it's gonna be a little tumultuous. But again, every time the Timberwolves and fans have been like, is this the time where he can grow up? He is moving ahead of schedule. And the great ones move ahead of schedule. So this is just another sort of like check mark where all of a sudden, CJ, the whole franchise and all of its fans 24 hours ago were like, of course it happened to the Wolves again. Of course it had to happen to a Minnesota team. This is what it's like to be a Minnesota sports fan. And less than 24 hours later, he was like, nah, I got you. That is ahead of schedule stuff that you can just check it off. It's an unending subjective checklist that everyone has. We didn't know this was on the checklist, but we watched it happen last night, and now we can go, check. He's got that in his arsenal too.
Right, exactly. I mean, he like we talked about, he'd be forced to grow up in a hurry, and some guys don't. And that's not an indictment. People talk about Jaden McDaniels. Why isn't he just become why hasn't he developed a scoring game? Why is he not taking another step up? Well, him and Anthony Edwards are the same age. They're 22 years old, like 21, 22. And there are 22-year-olds out there who still can't schedule their own haircuts. Like there's people out and now he's expected to lead an NBA franchise that has very big aspirations and they've never done it before. He's got to be the first one to do it. Almost just kind of like learning it on the fly. Like he's got to just teach himself to do that. And he has been. And that's the fun part about all this stuff. So we could talk forever about Anthony Edwards. He's awesome. He signed his max. He's here. It's so fun that the Wolves have a player like this, and hopefully Karl Anthony Towns can come back sooner rather than later and chip in for a playoff run. Corey, there's some things here with the Minnesota Vikings that we'll talk about with free agency. We've done a lot of kind of asking around about Kirk Cousins. We've done a lot of consternation on, is he coming back? Is he going to Atlanta? Everything. And I think we're pretty much kind of where we are. I don't think the needle has shifted for us really over the last 48, 72 hours in terms of where Kirk Cousins is. I think we're both pretty much in the camp of he's probably going to Atlanta, but also we have no idea. So here's another free agency rumor.
Well, let's ask the question again. Let's ask the question again real quick. We've been asking every day. Is Kirk Cousins a Viking next week?
70-30, he's in Atlanta.
I agree.
Okay. All right. So we'll see how we are on Monday when he signs a 5-year guaranteed contract with the Minnesota Vikings and is here for life. And if you're a Kirk Cousins fan, you can thank us for jinxing. Can
I ask a quick aside question?
Sure.
Are you prepared to either you're going to be sad if he's not a Viking, right? And you're going to you're going to be more sad if he's not a Viking. And you are going to be more happy if he is a Viking, right? Like my emotions on this are 50-50. He's going to that's 70-30.
Right.
But I still think I still think my heart will be more sad than happy if he's gone.
I think in the immediate, I think in the immediate, it'll feel like, oh man, that's a bummer. He's leaving. Like he's potentially, depending on how you view the franchise quarterbacks, potentially he's the second best quarterback in franchise history behind a Hall of Famer and Fran Tarkenton. Like that's
outside of like starburst supernova years from Brett Favre and Randall Cunningham and whatever.
Monte Culpepper and yeah.
Correct. No, he's the number 2 quarterback in franchise history.
I'll be bummed to see him leave for sure, but I think there is an optimism of okay, well, that means they're really going to go get a quarterback.
Yes.
It's been 10 years. 10 years was the last time that Vikings fans were actively, realistically looking at quarterbacks. And that was a fun draft class. I remember there was Teddy Bridgewater and Johnny Manziel and Blake Bortles and Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo. It's a fun quarterback class because there's a lot of things. And in terms of quarterback classes, it's not the 83 draft, but it still was a fun draft to talk about. And this draft is the same way. So yeah, I'll be bummed in the immediate. I think I'll get over it pretty quickly, depending on who the Vikings bring in at quarterback. If they bring in like Zach Wilson and they're like, hey, we're going to draft a quarterback, but here he is to mentor the young guy. And it's like, oh no, I'd rather not. So I think that's it. I think right now I'm not feeling I'll feel bummed just because I wish it would have worked out, but I think I'm ready to move on.
If they draft Penix, I'll get over it quickly. Like whatever the time frame is between Kirk Cousins not being a Viking and them drafting a quarterback, it'll be
trade up to 2 and draft Drake May. It's like, whoa, I'll be pretty excited.
Kirk who?
Yeah, exactly. Here's the free agency rumor. Christian Wilkins is a defensive end for the Miami Dolphins. He's one of the top defensive players in free agency. He's one of the top 50 free agents that are out there overall in football. The Vikings stunk mainly because they did not get good defensive line play. Now, looking through here, I can't quite remember if he's like a defensive end or either way. The Vikings need help in both, especially if Danielle Hunter is leaving. There is some steam that Christian Wilkins, the former Dolphin, would want to reunite with his former head coach and defensive coordinator, Brian Flores in Minnesota. He'd be one of the big free agents on the market. He'd command a nice contract. Corey, would you be in on him, or would you rather maybe say make a run at bringing the Danielle Hunter back?
Is the steam real that he wants to reunite with Flores? Is that a real thing, or is that a, hey, they used to play together, so maybe this makes sense? Like, are we stretching for that comparison, or is that a real thing?
No, it's a real thing. I think it is based on the reports I've seen.
Well, if that's the case, then that means Danielle Hunter's not coming back. They don't have, there's not enough. You can't have both of them. Not that you don't want both of them. I don't think it's a possibility to have both of them.
Not with what they want to do with the salary cap.
Correct. So, sure. Yes, I want him on the Vikings team if Danielle Hunter's not going to be on the Vikings team. How's that?
Yeah, it's good. I feel the same way. He's a defensive tackle. So it's more of the thing about the Vikings is they couldn't stop anybody in the run. Yep. And the reason is they didn't have a good, basically since Linval Joseph, they have not been able to find that. They haven't
had a fat guy in years. And the Vikings defenses of my lifetime, the Williams Wall, Linval Joseph, they've had some fat guys
Evan Williams.
You mentioned stuff.
Williams Wall. But yeah.
Like that's a huge, when I think of some of the Packers defenses from the past, one of the reasons their 3-4 was so good is because they had like Gilbert Brown and BJ Raji and Grady Jackson and like some just
whoever the guy they have is now is just as good.
Just a big old fat guy in the middle who's stronger than any other human on the planet. The Vikings haven't had that in a long time. It's really important. I think it's especially important in the style of defense that they play.
Right.
They need, I think it's probably arguable that is a more important position than defensive end.
Well, and they have I'm blanking on his name. He's the defensive tackle they had this year for the Vikings.
Harrison Phillips.
Harrison Phillips. There you go. Great player for what he is, which is like that second, like on third down, he's coming in and he's going to go all out. Like if you have that and you have him, now it's looking pretty good. If you can bring in Wilkins and have Phillips kind of be that rotational player, because he's like not quite good enough to be a starter, but like a super rotational player. If you can have that, and then maybe you draft a defensive lineman at 11, trade back in at the end of the first round and draft Penix. Well, there you go. That's a nice start on what you want to do with this team. And then in 2025, you have a ton of money to go fill some holes and you can have another draft pick and then the franchise can kind of move forward. But again, we'll see, because there's obviously other teams in play. The Texans have been floated around. They're in a more win now position because they have head coach and quarterback solidified. But overall, free agency is not that far away, Corey. So it's coming. Before we go, what's your big, bold prediction for the Vikings free agency? You said that Kirk Cousins is coming back. Do they sign Wilkins like a 5-year, $90 million contract? Do they sign Sam Darnold? Do they not sign a quarterback at all? Like, what is your bold prediction?
I have this feeling in my gut that it's all going to be very underwhelming.
Yeah.
It's going to be pieces that I'm not saying they're unimportant. They're going to be, like for long-term and short-term success, they're going to be the requisite pieces that need to be moved around. I mean, the Kirk Cousins news will be the biggest news, stay or go. But outside of that, because that's just a part of this process now. I think generally speaking, it's going to probably be fairly underwhelming. The excitement for the team is probably going to come in the draft. And I feel like that's pretty open-ended too. Like, it seems like it's written in stone that if Kirk Cousins isn't a Viking, that they're just going to draft a quarterback. And with a former quarterback head coach and whatever, like that makes a lot of sense, but it's not like this team couldn't use a big fat defensive lineman or a linebacker who can go sideline to sideline, or somebody in the defensive. Like, they've got a
There's
lot
some
of
good
things that
defensive
can
linemen
be
in this
fixed.
draft.
That's not. I expect, generally speaking, when's the draft? Early April.
It's April 25th.
Oh, it's late April. Okay.
Yeah.
I expect by in a month and a half's time to just be like, at least we know how this season's going to go. I have that sort of like, it's not that it's not going to be set up for the long term, and that's not fun, but I have a feeling that the start of the 24 season is going to be a little like, okay, let's just get through this one.
If you bring back Kirk Cousins, it's not only like, oh, cool, they have a shot at the playoffs. It's, well, you better make the playoffs if you're going to spend all this money to bring Kirk Cousins back, and not just make the playoffs, like go on a run. Like, if you're willing to spend the money to bring back Kirk Cousins, you are going, like, the owners aren't just going to have you sign a $40 million. Like, if you bring back Kirk Cousins, it's playoffs. If you do not, like you said, it's okay, well, this year is just a wait and see year. And it's, like you said, it's important for the franchise, but from a fan engagement, you're just going to be like, okay, well, 6 wins, but like those 6 wins will be with the rookie quarterback, and there'll be some momentum, fun things you can go off of, and they'll have like almost $100 million in salary cap by 2025 if everything goes kind of the way it looks like it's going. But yeah, I get what you're saying 100%. So
unless they do like really, really move up, like if Drake May ends up a Viking, then I'm like, okay, now that totally changes it. They
still might win the same amount of games, but it's just more like, let's see this big time quarterback prospect.
I'll be excited about the player, and if they get a quarterback, if they get Penix, or if they get JJ McCarthy or whoever it ends up being, like, I'll be excited about that guy. I will not. That doesn't mean good things for the season, though, probably.
Right. This has been the Morning Sports Desk for Friday, March 8th.